Welcome to Totally Talent Podcast by HR.com, your go-to source for all things talent. Whether you're looking for expert insights on high-volume hiring, the latest trends in recruitment technology, or strategies for building a winning team, we've got you covered. Join us for each episode as we dive deep into the challenges and opportunities shaping the talent landscape today. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Totally Talent here on HR.com. My name is Mike Wood, and I'm here with Paul Farnsworth, who is the president of DICE. Hi, Paul. How are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm good. Thanks very much for having me. Looking forward to a constructive conversation.
Yes. So just in case my listeners may not know of DICE or have heard of DICE, but can you just give me the spiel of what does DICE do?
Yes. So dice.com is a almost 30-year-old talent platform. So we match technologists looking for jobs in technology and people who need technologists to do whatever they need to do with technologists with great talent. So that's what DICE does.
That's great. And now your background is really interesting. You were a CTO who became president. Now, what does running DICE look like for someone who came up building it and is now selling it, so to speak?
Yeah. I'm lucky. I spent my career as a technologist. So right the way from the days when you still needed a memo to have a computer on your desk. An email was something that you went to training to use. So crazy evolution across the time that I've been working. And then, ultimately you get to a point, I think, where anybody that's in technology kind of starts to see the value you're bringing to a business, and business is digitizing over the last couple decades. You get to a point where you're like, okay, what can I do now? And running the business is always, I think, a natural point. And we're seeing more and more senior technology executives turning into that kind of business leader because of the core of businesses becoming digital. And DICE is a digital business. We're effectively a digital platform. And my background with being a technologist meant that I had a lot of things I could bring, I think, to the mix as well. I think back to your original question, what's the shift between running a business and becoming or being the CTO for it? It really comes, I think it makes you focus really on the fact that technology isn't for technology's sake. Technology is there to enable something, whether it's a better user experience, it's more value to a customer, efficiency, or a product. And just at making sure that you're aligning the investments you're making and where customer value is starts to really become it. And I spend a lot more time in spreadsheets looking at sales data would be the other thing I think I've learned as I shifted. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's funny that you have the background that I see a lot of HR people kind of falling into, is that they started in IT, but now IT and HR are kind of merging together. And I'm just curious your thoughts about, in the future, are we going to see more of IT being the center of the organization with HR part of it, or it's because you can't, they've been closer together than they ever have been before?
Yeah. So I'm going to tell you a little story first,
okay,
and I'll answer the question. And you're in the Boston area, I think.
I am.
Yeah. So I've been very lucky. I've been involved with a part of MIT called CISA, which is the Center for Information Systems Research. I don't know if you've ever been to any of the CISA events down there.
I haven't been to that particular one, but I love MIT and all the different stuff they do.
Well, they have spent the last 30 years too, more or less, looking at the impact of information technology on business. And they have a model, which I love, which kind of really shows that at some point in the last 20 years or so, businesses are flipping over. And by flipping over, what I mean is that for a long time, if you ran a business, you had your business processes and you added IT on top to make it more efficient and faster. Think of spreadsheets instead of, writing in accounting books and all the rest of it. But if you took the computers away, you could kind of still cobble your business together without the computer. Over the last few years, decade or so, businesses have fundamentally flipped. And now information technology and computing becomes the core of how business models are built. You can't take the computers away. And we see this all the time with cybersecurity incidents where businesses just collapse when the computers aren't working. And as a result of that, back to your question, IT starts to become part of a really core discipline in any business. So as a result of that, you start to squish all that together. Where we are, particularly with the last wave of AI, generative AI has come out, is I think about AI in three buckets for a business. And I'll tell you what the buckets are, and then I'll relate this to where that's important to HR. They are, you can put AI in your product. Lots of HR tools, lots of platforms now stick AI in their product. I'm sure everyone's tired of seeing Copilot pop up in Microsoft tools, and that's AI in a product in a nutshell. And those AI in a product is the core foundation models, and then everyone implementing AI on top of all that. Then I think for businesses, you have AI tools that you use as an individual. So now I'm using AI in my business, and that's things like Claude, where it's starting to do work for you, but you're still directing it and you've got some control. And then the last bucket is agentic AI, which is where the AI is being tasked like a human to do a task inside an organization. And I think that's where HR and IT become smushed together, because you're starting to get to a point where if you want to onboard an agentic agent inside your company, you have to onboard it like you would a human being. It needs a email address and it needs permissions to do things in Teams or Slack or whatever you're using. And then you start to be able to, that's really where it drives who actually is responsible for those agents now. Is it HR or is it IT or is it now HRIT? I don't know what you HRIT. Is that the new acronym?
Yeah, it's a crazy type of thing, and like when I first heard about like agents being part of like the org chart, I believe some company came out with that like a year ago. People, it was way too early. People were like, agent's not a person, whatever. But if you think about it, when you have it do something, it is like having an intern or having,
Yeah.
someone that's doing a small task. And you start out with the small things, but then you progressively add harder things to it. So it really is. I mean, I found it really beneficial to what I do, just in having. But it is a really cool technology that I think is really going to be one of these bottom layers of HR teams kind of moving forward.
Yeah, and it's not just HR. This is going to be something that all parts of the business leverage. The challenge for HR though is, particularly in more complicated businesses, there's a lot of infrastructure which I think is hidden if you're not part of the HR community around permissions and onboarding and app. What do you give these tools access to? And the HR team are actually just as equipped as the IT teams have been with permission management, and that's something that is going to get squished together. It's going to be a team sport, I think, in the short term.
Yeah, and legal is just like, if you ever wanted a job that's never going to go away, go ahead and get into legal.
Yeah, that's right.
It is
Yeah.
just like there's so many compliance hurdles and stuff, and you might get excited to use AI in your organization, and it's a lot of people do, but there's a lot of sensitive information out there that you
Yep.
can't put out. I think Claude came out where there's a story about people's Claude conversations being public this morning, and people were like, "Uh-oh." Like, I don't, like you have to realize that most of this stuff is pretty public.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think it's the same discipline as understanding when you use a tool, a SaaS tool, that data is cheap to store and lives for a long time, and you just need to remember that when you're using any of these tools. To be honest, so yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about the tools themselves. So like every career platform right now says the same three words. They say that they're AI matching, they're quality candidates, there's better outcomes. Now pretend that I'm a skeptical TA leader with a finite budget. Like what does Dice actually do that the generalist platforms can't?
Yeah, so I will. I'll make a small pitch for Dice to say, Dice has spent the last 20 years or so building effectively machine learning models that associate technical skills together. So we have a lot of experience at doing that. That has accelerated with the usage of large language models. That kind of association between a technical skill and a buzzword is been narrowed with a as a result of that stuff. Dice also has great AI matching, improved quality, and we help take work away. But our real value is that we are focused on technologists in particular. So, we have a cohort of candidates on the platform that aren't necessarily active or visible on the more generalist sites because they are looking for specifically engineering and tech roles. So if you're a company that's looking for somebody who can deploy AI agents, or as you're seeing demand in the business, Dice is a good option if you've exhausted other platforms to go find that technical skill, because that's what we do. We're not broad, we're very narrow in terms of technical people for technical roles.
Now, I hear every day, I hear some story about tech jobs cratering, and that it's harder for software developers to get a job. I think you had a June report that put that software development postings have dropped 22%. Do you think that is something that's going to stick around, or do you think it will revamp itself as we build this AI foundation?
So it's a shift. There is a skill shift going on. While software development roles, job openings have declined, and that's not it's not a shock to me, because there's been a lot of promise in these tools that the agents will build the code. In fact, I'd say most software developers now, if you're not using AI as part of your workflow, you're not really a software developer anymore, because software developers should be using these tools. It's a productivity boost beyond anything I've seen in my career, certainly, where we've got to. Having said that, though, I think the opportunity for software developers is fundamentally shifting. And in the reports that we've done, we've seen the need for AI skills go through the roof. We've seen new roles actually start. And a good example of that would be, I think, people are starting to realize in more complicated environments, and even actually smaller organizations too, the skills that make software engineers valuable are the same skills that will help bring together the data that let a digital agent be effective inside a company. So it's likely that you'll see some of those resources shift a little, and it's the same skill set that's really required. In fact, I'd argue if you've been a software developer, you are incredibly well placed now to look at enablement of AI in organizations, not maybe in the classic software development sense, but certainly in navigating how systems work, how data is rationalized, how do you connect things together, which is something software developers have been good at for the last few years. So demand is definitely there. We're seeing large increases in the need for roles in organizations, particularly to enable this stuff.
Yeah, it's almost like so AI is kind of helping the everyday person, like the me's of the world, think as a software engineer. But you still need to have those people in your organization to see the whole picture, I think.
Yeah.
Now, I know that, so I was looking at your sentiment research, and you found that 74% of tech pros are planning to leave, but not out of fear or not ambition, but they're leaving out of fear, not ambition. And burnout is up 50%. So put me in the heads of the tech worker nowadays. What is it like?
Yeah, I think it's been a bit of a roller coaster ride the last 5 years. We saw a couple things happen. Just to replay, just for everyone that forgot everything that went on, but you essentially had COVID that drove enormous demand for engineers, because everyone pivoted to, we need to be digital, and we needed the way of managing all of our infrastructure. We saw a big demand for engineers and technology people. And then I think what happened was there was a pullback. We overhired in some places. Companies got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We saw a dip in kind of demand, which is back to your comment on, had there been a reduction in demand for software engineers? And then on top of that, just as you start to see things stabilize a little bit, AI comes along. And the promise of AI, of course, is that you just need less people, because AI can do it, and it's going to be wonderful. So with all that together, if you're a software engineer, I think you've got a lot of press about the fact that my job might not exist because AI is going to automate me out of a role. You have a situation where people made choices about where they live from a hybrid or an in-office perspective, and businesses believe now that they are back in control of the labor market, and they're asking people to come back in the office where they had very flexible policies before, and that's driving uncertainty. And then just to exacerbate everything, you have this narrative that more junior roles are most impacted by AI. So as a result, you have a generation of new grads coming in or new engineers who are like, what am I doing? You've got senior engineers who feel a little bit stuck. And then you see the demand of businesses to continue to drive delivery and IT. And I can tell you in my career, I've never worked in an organization where I sat down with the business units and they've said, no, we're good. We did everything we wanted. We don't need any more IT now. There's always demand, but I think some of that demand has got sucked into, well, we don't need to add people to do more because the tools are now able to do that. And it just drives a lot of pressure into the individual contributors, particularly where they are at the bottom. And technology is a role where there's been a lot of pressure in the role. I'm sure you've been involved in projects that have a fixed deadline and it crunches up to the end. There's been books written about the mythical man month and all that stuff in terms of how do you think about productivity. It's just coming to a bit of a head. So if you're an engineer, I think there's quite a lot of fear in terms of, can I leave? Where is the opportunity? What's the flexibility that I might have if I go? It's keeping people in jobs, I think, longer than they really want to be. We're likely to see some shift in the future here as things open back up again and that demand and supply flips.
So I love the fact that Dice has stayed to their core, what they're known for, what they're good for is tech talent. There's been a lot of almost every kind of niche player that I've seen has tried to be, oh no, we do everything. We're the suite of everything, and that's making everything look the same. But I am curious about what you do with you have all this value for these tech profiles, but now it's never been easier to generate these AI, applications and whatnot. How do you keep your profiles and that tough stuff authentic and keep the fraud out?
Yeah, and look, this is not a unique problem for Dice. This is an industry issue. Generative AI in particular has taken the ability and some of the discipline of a recruiter to look at a resume and go, this doesn't feel quite right. It's raised the bar on that because when you wash this stuff through the tools that we have that are increasingly more and more impressive, the results are much harder to catch. What we have, though, on the Dice side is we continue to look at identity verification. Can you really show that you're a human being, not just AI? Is there any history that we can tie to? Because we have 30 years of profile and some degree of we can authenticate your career progression. So when people are using tools to customize their resumes for a particular job, you can at least have some idea of, is that left field or is it a progression, right? There's a lot of opportunity there as well. I do think, however, the one thing that I would say this explosion of resumes is likely to help us as an industry on, which is we have been in a bit of a tug of war between quantity versus quality for a while. If you're a TA manager and you're reporting up to or a TA leader and you're reporting up in terms of value, a lot of scorecards are, how many applies did you get? How many have you filtered through and all the rest of it? There's been a tendency to want to see volume on roles, but not necessarily quality. And I think now we're getting back to a place where everyone understands quantity is less important, but quality is really where the focus should be. And back to my models of AI, Dice has definitely been leveraging AI in the product, make the decision making, the quality assessment, and the skills gap assessment easier for TA leaders to assess. That said, we also have to stretch our model to plug that in because it's very likely, both on the candidate side and the recruiter side, that people want to use more agentic tools to have an assistant helping them do their work. And we need to enable that and keep the core of the quality in the middle.
So what do you? I want to put on let's put our future thinking hats on for a minute. And I told someone the other day you used to be able to see HR tech. Okay, it's going to get to this point, but now everything's so fast.
Yep.
Everything is crazy that I'm wondering, okay, let's think a little bit outside the box. What is a job board going to look like in this future? And what do you think Dice might look at? Like, what are you, because I'm thinking, like, if you look at any of the job boards now, they're being juiced by fake candidates or whatever, and it just seems like it's really tough when you look at a role and you see 3,000 people apply for it.
Yep.
It's tough on both sides because the hiring team doesn't want, they're not going to go through 3,000 people. So where do you think this might kind of sift out?
So we have a we would describe the future of Dice on the recruiter side. I'll talk about the candidates in just a second, but the recruiter side is multimodal. And by multimodal, what I mean is that we're building a nice UI that you can access if that is your preference. You want to come into a traditional tool and filter through resumes and use it. Great. That's what you should be doing to do that. I suspect, though, that when we get to a point of maturity with agents inside enterprises, that most of the access for Dice, particularly if you're a larger, more sophisticated recruiting shop, will be through some sort of agent. And the agent conversation will be between the data that we have in terms of signals about how active a candidate is, what the quality is, and what their readiness for a role would be, and the agent on the other side doing some of the work. So your job as a TA recruiter will actually be more like reviewing the work of your assistant than it will be actually doing the work. And that has some benefits because it frees you up to focus on quality and really spending time with the candidates that you believe are the best fit for the roles. But it does shift the way you have to work a little bit, because I think and we have to balance both. So back to your question, what does the future look like? It's going to be people who are embracing that more assistant-led sort of way of working, I think, that are going to be more successful. Some of the busy work will happen between those platforms, agent to agent, and hopefully we get to a point where you're freeing up humans to do the more human-y things.
Yeah, so I wrote something a while ago. Like I go to all the conferences and stuff, and I see the latest features. And okay, like there's AI interviewers that are everywhere, and that's going to be something that's going to be part of everything soon. And I was trying to think of what the future of hiring looks like, and I got along this thought of candidates will have their agent that knows everything about them, and employers will have their agents that knows everything about what they're looking for. Once those match, then the only thing that you're going to have to do is you already, let's say you and I are talking about a job. You already know that you are looking for a candidate like me. I already know that I'm looking for a company like you. And it's that decision of whether you're actually going to work there that is the only thing left to do besides, compensation and that type of stuff. That's where I feel it's going.
I think it will. I also think that some of the really annoying parts of job seeking will be eased. And, I'll pick on one that's super annoying, which is when can we have a conversation, right? The trading of calendars, and there's a lot of tools where I share my calendar and I have to look at my calendar, and then I think that's going to get infinitely easier because there will be a little agent which will coordinate that. So I'm looking forward to this. I think there is a lot of opportunity, but it really comes down to I don't believe that Dice as a platform will control that flow. I think we have to be part of it and enable it. And then you plug whatever your agent preference is on the outside to make that work. I have an individual that I follow, and he's right on the edge of experimenting with job seeking, and he's doing exactly what you said. He's got 3 agents, one that searches, one that builds resumes, and one that does the interview prep for him. But there's always going to be some human element at the end there. I hope we just get more time for that and less time for administration. So.
Yeah, I mean, and as these things get automated, there's also chances for them to be automated in the wrong direction, and so we're going to need to sift that out. But I mean, the current hiring process now is horrible, and everybody knows that you shouldn't need 7 interviews to make a decision. You shouldn't need that screening call. So I am glad that the AI interviews exist because I think it's going to get rid of that screening call that really is just a waste of everybody's time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, what else do you see that's kind of like what gets you excited about technology nowadays? And it doesn't have to be with Dice or with anything, but what's kind of cool that you're looking at?
I mean, I think it's and I'm lucky enough to have been through a whole bunch of changes where there is amazing predictions, then doom and gloom, and then some rationalization in the middle of usefulness, right? That's kind of the pattern we go through. But I mean, I think what we're starting to see now outside of the hype is real value in some of these AI tools. So if you ask me what gets me excited, it's actually less about the continuation of the models and where we might go. It's more about the use of it in that to make things just super easy and convenient. Like it's taking a photo of a card and saying, "Hey, tell me about this company," and it takes away all the friction for you to do that. Um, I came back from vacation recently, and I was in England, driving down a long road. I'm like, this is a crazy long brick wall. Now I could have gone to Google Maps and tried to figure out where I was and what was the estate, but I literally had a conversation with my agent and said, "Hey, I drove past this really long wall. Any idea what it is?" 2 seconds later, told me the whole history of the wall. It was
Yeah,
crazy.
it's got your location, it's got everything. I love that. I've been out. So I was in the Boy Scouts growing up, and you look at different birds, you look at different plants and stuff. But now that I'm older, I don't have time to do all that stuff. But now I'm like, what is this plant or what is that bird? I'll take a quick picture of it, tell me right away what it is.
Yeah,
And I'm
it
like,
is.
just the knowledge is everywhere now.
It is. And I think us bringing all that together is going to be incredibly powerful. So I'm excited. I think it's every day's a new adventure, isn't it? With some of this stuff.
So I encourage my listeners, if you're looking for tech talent, please look into Dice. I love that you guys have picked your lane, and that's what you do, and you're good at it. Keep at it. Don't try to add other stuff onto it, but check out Dice. And are you going to be at any of the conferences this fall, or?
I might be. I'm actually going to be in AI4 next week, so I don't know when the podcast comes out. But if you happen
Oh,
to be at AI4, I'll be around. We haven't got the rest of the conference plans. One thing I will add to your check Dice out is in the last year we've transformed the way you can try Dice. We have a completely self-service option now if you're a recruiter, so you don't need to talk to a salesperson. You can come on month to month, no commitment. Just give us a try.
oh, that's fantastic. Like nobody wants to talk to salespeople. I'm sorry, salespeople out there, but
We love our salespeople, but I agree. If you want to try without dealing with that, we're ready. So,
yeah. All right. Well, check out Dice, everybody, and thank you, Paul, for joining me on Totally Talent.
Mike, thank you anytime. A pleasure.
Thanks for tuning in to the Totally Talent podcast by HR.com. We hope you find today's episode insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to explore more episodes and discover valuable resources at hr.com/podcasts, where you can listen to all of our podcasts. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and making a difference in the world of talent.